My name is Lindsay. Thank you so much for joining me here today. At the moment, I've been reading through the first part of the book of Exodus, and where I'd like to share with you guys today comes right after the Israelites have left Egypt. They've crossed the Red Sea, left the Egyptians behind them, drowning in the sea, all the army, and they've just already started receiving manna from heaven. They've gotten water from the rock. They've had a small fight with the Amalekites, which was actually quite miraculous. But now where I'd like to focus on is Exodus chapter 18. So I'll read it out, and it's not a very long one, it's only 27 verses, and then we will kind of unpack some of the things that I've been discovering in this chapter recently. Okay, let's get into it. And Jethro, the priest of Midian, Moses' father-in-law, heard of all that God had done for Moses and for Israel his people, that the Lord had brought Israel out of Egypt. Then Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, took Zipporah, Moses' wife, after he had sent her back with her 2 sons, of whom the name of one was Gershom, for he said, I have been a stranger in a foreign land, and the name of the other was Eleazar, for he said, the God of my father was my help and delivered me from the sword of Pharaoh. So this is the names that Moses gave to his sons and the reasons for it. And Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, came with his sons and his wife to Moses in the wilderness, where he was encamped at the mountain of God. So basically, Moses' wife, Zipporah, and his 2 sons, they actually went back to her father, where they'd come from, while the whole Exodus was happening. So they actually weren't involved in the crossing of the Red Sea or any of that kind of stuff, by the looks of things. Now this is Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, he came with his sons and his wife to Moses in the wilderness, where he was encamped at the mountain of God. Now he said to Moses, I, your father-in-law Jethro, am coming to you with your wife and her 2 sons with her. So Moses went out to meet his father-in-law, bowed down and kissed him, and they asked each other about their well-being, and they went into the tent. So everything's going pretty good at this point. They're happy to see each other. And Moses told his father-in-law all that the Lord had done to Pharaoh and to the Egyptians for Israel's sake, all the hardship that had come upon them on the way, and how the Lord had delivered them. Then Jethro rejoiced for all the good which the Lord had done for Israel, whom he had delivered out of the hand of the Egyptians. And Jethro said, Blessed be the Lord, who has delivered you out of the hand of the Egyptians and out of the hand of Pharaoh, and who has delivered the people from under the hand of the Egyptians. Now I know that the Lord is greater than all the gods, for in the very thing in which they behaved proudly, he was above them. So basically, Jethro is saying, wow, that's such an amazing story of what has happened, all the miracles that God has done. Now I know that this God is bigger than any other God, because back in those days, if you remember, in the ancient Near East, much like today, in fact, around the world, people believed that there were all sorts of different gods, and they had varying levels of power or authority over certain regions or people or things. Like some would be the god of the sun, and like another one would be the god of the rain, or the god of fertility or whatever. And so when the true God did this thing and brought out the Israelites from Egypt, it basically was so amazing to Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, that he basically becomes converted. He sees that this God is the true God and he is the most powerful God. And so he acknowledges that. Now I know that the Lord is greater than all the gods, for in the very thing in which they behaved proudly, he was above them. Because if you remember that the Egyptians, they believed their gods were the most powerful, and if any god could defeat the Egyptian gods, that would make him the most powerful god in the earth. So he's seeing that. Verse 12, Then Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, took a burnt offering and other sacrifices to offer to God. And Aaron came with all the elders of Israel to eat bread with Moses' father-in-law before God. This is kind of almost, it's not like a baptism. It's like he's not getting dunked in water, but by Jethro, giving sacrifices to God and also doing it with the leadership of the nation of Israel, he was basically, in the in crowd now. He was being brought into the family of Israel. He basically proselytized, he converted from another religion, and they're all accepting him as a new convert to following the way of the one true God. So that's where he's at. We see he's in a good place. He believes in God. He's in good relationship with his son-in-law. He's brought his daughter and his grandkids back to hang out with dad. And now he's also converted to the one true God. So that's what we know about Jethro at this point. And so it was on the next day, this is verse 13, that Moses sat to judge the people. This is what he would do every day. And the people stood before Moses from morning until evening. So I'm imagining super long lines of like 2,000 people just snaking around the encampment waiting to complain to Moses and say, help us, I'm having a squabble with this person, he stole my piece of bread, I don't know, something like that. And Moses has to deal with every little issue in the camp. So Jethro is watching this happen. So when Moses' father-in-law saw all that he did for the people, he said, what is this thing that you are doing for the people? Why do you alone sit and all the people stand before you from morning until evening? And Moses said to his father-in-law, because the people come to me to inquire of God. When they have a difficulty, they come to me and I judge between one and another, and I make known the statutes of God and his laws. So Moses' father-in-law said to him, the thing that you do is not good. Well, this is day 2 of him being in the camp. Oh dear. And now he's calling out Moses and saying, you're not doing it right. You're doing it wrong, in fact. This is not good. Verse 18, both you and these people who are with you will surely wear yourselves out. For this thing is too much for you. You are not able to perform it by yourself. Listen now to my voice. I will give you counsel, and God will be with you. Stand before God for the people so that you may bring the difficulties to God. And you shall teach them the statutes and the laws, and show them the way in which they must walk and the work they must do. Moreover, you shall elect from all the people able men, such as fear God, men of truth, hating covetousness, which is basically jealousy, and place such over them to be rulers of thousands, rulers of hundreds, rulers of 50s, and rulers of 10s, and let them judge the people at all times. Then it will be that every great matter that they shall bring to you, but every small matter they themselves shall judge. So it will be easier for you, for they will bear the burden with you. If you do this thing, and God so commands you, then you will be able to endure. And all this people will also go to their place in peace. So Moses heeded the voice of his father-in-law and did all that he had said. And Moses chose able men out of all Israel and made them heads over the people, rulers of thousands, rulers of hundreds, rulers of 50s, and rulers of 10s, so that they judged the people at all times. The hard cases they brought to Moses, but they judged every small case themselves. Then Moses let his father-in-law depart, and he went his way to his own land. Okay, so that is the chapter. It's quite quick, and I already explained essentially the first half of what was going on with Jethro, but now let's look at the second half a little bit more closely. So what we see here is that Moses is, he's had his party, he's hung out with his father-in-law, and now he's got to go and get some work done. And so he goes to work, everyone's come lined up and just has all these issues that they think that only Moses can handle. And now this is something that people with a bit of a savior complex sometimes have an issue with. They think that they are the only ones who can do anything about a situation, and they don't often think to delegate, or maybe they want to hold on to everything just in case nobody else can do as good of a job, and they don't let anybody else help them. But this is really, really important for any leaders to take notice of. As a leader, and I'm finding this in my own position now, this year I'm in more of a leadership role than I ever have been before, and I'm finding that it's absolutely impossible to get all the things done by myself. I can't call everyone, I can't disciple every single person, I can't make every single decision. And I also see that for the pastors that I work under, they can't do everything, and so they have to delegate things to me, and then I have to delegate other things to other people. And I was reading this chapter a couple of days ago, and it really, really stood out to me. And then later that day, I was just overwhelmed with, one more thing that I'm not particularly gifted at doing. And as I sat down to do it, I was like, I don't know how to do this, and it's just going to take so much of my time and energy to figure it out. And then the fact that I had read this story that morning popped into mind, and I was like, okay, how can I think creatively? How can I find somebody who is better at doing this one particular thing that I am? And I had to think, and I was like, okay, I know the right person to ask to help in this way. And I called that person up and I explained the situation. I said, hey, can you do this for me? And they were like, sure, just send me the details and I'll get it done. And that's just taken something off my plate, which is just really, really wonderful. And it's a biblical thing for us to do. We see here that, Jethro, who is a follower of God already at this point, he's also, if we see his background a little bit, he is a leader of a clan, right? When Moses ran away a few chapters before this as a young man, 40 years earlier, he ran away from Egypt and he ended up at Jethro's house, right? He saved Jethro's daughters from the mean shepherds who weren't letting them use the well and all this kind of thing. And he married one of those daughters, and he's now in Jethro's household. Jethro is a leader. Jethro understands how leadership works. So when Jethro sees that Moses hasn't actually been a leader for a very long time, he's just been leading sheep around the place. He hasn't really learnt to lead people at this point, and yet God has placed him in a people leading position. Moses is not perfect by any means. Moses had some professional development skills that he needed to learn. And so Jethro, he comes into the situation, he says, Moses, you're doing it wrong, but I have a solution for you if you'll just listen, if you'll just take my counsel, if you'll take my advice. This is something that you can do. Delegate. Delegation is so, so important. Find people who are capable, people who are trustworthy, people who, what were their qualifications that he needed? Moreover, you shall select from all the people able men, such as fear God, men of truth, hating jealousy or covetousness, and place them over as rulers of thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. So they have to be people who they respect God and his laws. They are under God's leadership and government. They are capable. They're able men. They hate any kind of jealousy or covetousness or people who basically just want to get things for themselves. They're humble and they're other-centered, and they're not self-serving people. They're not wanting to be in the job to get a better position for themselves. Place these people in this position of leadership. And so there are certain criteria for people who are in leadership. And for us as leaders, any of you out there, if you're watching this channel, which is called Discipling Kingdom Leaders, this is something I'm really, really passionate about, is leadership. I'm growing in this area myself, and I really want any of you guys who feel like God is calling you into leadership, I want you to grow as much as you possibly can in this area, because God needs good leaders. God can't lead the entire 5 million people of Israel without a good system of leadership. And now there are many more people on this planet who we need to be leading to Jesus and leading in the gospel work. And so there is much greater need for good leadership now. And so if you're feeling like you're one of those leaders that God has called for such a time as this to lead somehow in this kingdom for his glory, then you need to be growing. And if this is something that you're finding in your position of leadership or an area that you're growing in, that you're trying to do things all by yourself, that's not God's way of doing things. God gave Jethro this really good advice, this really good wisdom to pass on to Moses. And so if we look at that relationship for a moment, let's have a look at that. So leadership requires delegation, but it also requires listening to good counsel. Leaders need mentorship. Leaders need leaders, right? We can't be leading if we don't have somebody else who can see into our lives and see into our situation to speak into it, right? We need to have a mentor, at least one, many mentors. The more counsel that you get, the better off you're likely to be, right? If you've only got one or two people that you listen to and nobody else, you might only see one side of the story. You might get a skewed idea of just these two perspectives. But if you listen to 10 or 15 really wise people, there might be a lot of good ideas that come out of this that you have to navigate through to get to a much better answer than just that one or two people that you would have listened to otherwise. Now in this case, Moses only has Jethro in this situation, but Jethro is better than nobody, okay? So I really, really recommend that if you are in any level of leadership, if you've only got like one kid, you're a stay-at-home mom, you're a leader. If you have a whole church to lead, you're a leader. If you're anywhere in between, if you lead in secular business, if you are a teacher, if you are anything, really, you are very likely in a leadership position, and you need to hear this. So the thing I recommend is find a mentor that you know personally, who knows you personally. Not some internet guru, not some author that you read their books. They're great, but they don't know you and they can't speak into your situation. What we saw here is Jethro came, he hung out, and then the next day he sat and watched all day, from morning till night, as Moses sat and judged the people. And then at the end of that, he said, I've been watching this, and this doesn't look right. I can see into your situation, and what I see is not good, so I'm going to speak and tell you what you can do to change this for the better. Okay, so you need somebody who can see into your situation and who can speak into that situation. That is basically all I have to tell you guys today. I really hope that this has been helpful for you. It's been really helpful for me to go through this passage and just see all the things that have jumped out at me. Please let me know in the comments below if you find yourself in a leadership position in any description, and if this has helped you, and what specifically that I've told you guys today has helped you guys today. Alright, blessings, I love you guys, and I'll see you again next Friday. Bye.